Kafka, Metamorphosis Part 2. But when, panting after his efforts, he again found himself stretched out just as before, when he saw his little legs struggling more wildly than ever, despairing of finding any means of bringing peace and order into this chaotic procedure, he once again realized that he absolutely could not stay in bed and that it was perfectly reasonable to sacrifice everything to the slightest chance of getting out. At the same time, he did not forget that cool and wise reflection would be far better than desperate resolutions. Ordinarily, at such moments he turned his eyes to the window to gain encouragement and hope. But this day the fog prevented him from seeing the other side of the street. The window gave him neither confidence nor strength. 7 o'clock already, he said as he listened once more to the sound of the alarm clock. 7 o'clock already, and the fog has got no thinner. He lay back again for a moment, breathing weakly, as though, in the complete silence, he could calmly await the return to his normal self. Then he said, "Before 1:15 it is absolutely essential for me to be up. In any case, someone will be sent from the office to ask for me before then, for the place opens at 7. And he began to rock on his back in order to get his whole body out of bed in one movement. In this manner, he would be able to protect his head by raising it sharply as he fell. His back seemed to be hard, nothing would be risked by falling on it to the floor. His only fear was that the noise of his fall, which must surely resound through the whole house, might arouse terror, or, at the very least, uneasiness. However, that would have to be risked. When Gregor had half his body out of bed, the new method seemed more like a game than a task, for he had only to swing himself on his back. He began to think how easily he could have got up if only he had had a little assistance. 2 strong people, he thought of his father and the servant girl, would have been quite enough. They would have needed only to pass their arms under his round back, raise it from the bed, quickly lean forward with their burden, and then wait carefully till he had completed the operation of settling himself on the ground, where he hoped his feet would at last find a way of working together. But even if the doors had not been closed, would it have been wise for him to call for help? At this idea, despite his misery, he could not repress a smile. Now he had progressed so far that, by sharply accentuating his swinging movement, he felt he was nearly losing his balance. He would have to take a serious decision, for in 5 minutes it would be 7:45. But suddenly there was a knock at the front door. Someone from the office, he said to himself, and he felt his blood run cold, while his little legs quickened their saraband. For a moment all was quiet. "They're not going to the door," thought Gregor, in an access of absurd hope. But of course the maid, with a firm tread, went to the door and opened it. Gregor needed to hear only the caller's first words of greeting to know immediately who it was, the manager himself. Why was Gregor, particularly, condemned to work for a firm where the worst was suspected at the slightest inadvertence of the employees? Were the employees, without exception, all scoundrels? Was there among their number not one devoted, faithful servant, who, if it did so happen that by chance he missed a few hours' work one morning, might have found himself so numbed with remorse that he just could not leave his bed? Would it not have been enough to send some apprentice to put things right, if, in any case, it was necessary to make inquiries at all, instead of the manager himself having to come, in order to let the whole innocent family know that the clearing up of so suspicious an affair could only be entrusted to a person of his importance? These thoughts so irritated Gregor that he swung himself out of bed with all his might. This made a loud thud, but not the terrible crash that he had feared. The carpet somewhat softened the blow, and Gregor's back was more elastic than he had thought, and so his act was not accompanied by any din. Only his head had been slightly hurt. Gregor had not raised it enough, and it had been knocked in the fall. He turned over a little to rub it on the carpet, in pain and anger. "Something fell in there just then," cried the manager, in the room on the left. Gregor tried to imagine his employer's face if such a mishap had occurred to him, for such a thing was possible, he had to admit. But, as if in brutal reply, the manager began pacing up and down in the next room, making his patent leather boots creak. And in the other room on the right, Gregor's sister whispered to warn her brother, "Gregor, the manager is here." "I know," said Gregor to himself, but he dared not raise his voice enough for his sister to hear. "Gregor," said his father in the room on the left, "the manager has come to find out why you didn't catch the early train. We don't know what to say. He wants to speak to you personally. So please open the door. I'm sure he will be kind enough to excuse the untidiness of your room." Good morning, Mr. Samsa," interrupted the manager, cordial and brisk. "He is not well," said his mother to the manager, while his father went on shouting through the door. "Believe me, he is not well, sir. How else could Gregor have missed the train? The boy thinks of nothing but his work. It makes me upset to see how he never goes out after supper. Do you know he's just spent a whole week here, and been at home every evening? He sits down with us at the table and stays there, quietly reading the paper, or studying his timetables. His greatest indulgence is to do a little fretwork. Just lately he made a small picture frame. It was finished in 2 or 3 evenings, and you'd be surprised how pretty it is. It is hanging up in his room. As soon as Gregor opens his door, you will be able to see it. I am so glad you came, sir, because without you we would never have got Gregor to open his door. He is so obstinate, and surely he must be ill, even though he denied it this morning." "I am just coming," said Gregor slowly and carefully, but he continued to lie still, so as not to miss a word of the conversation. "I can offer no other suggestion," declared the manager. "Let us only hope it is nothing serious. However, we businessmen must often, fortunately or not, as you will, get on with our jobs and ignore our little indispositions." "Well, can the manager come in now?" asked his father impatiently, rapping on the door again. "No," said Gregor. In the room on the left there was a painful silence. In that on the right the sister began to sob. Why did she not go to the others? Possibly she had only just got out of bed and was not yet dressed. And why did she weep? Because he did not get up to let the manager in, because he risked losing his position, and because the boss would once more worry his parents about their old debts. These were misplaced troubles. Gregor was still there and had not the slightest intention of letting his family down. At this very moment, he was stretched out on the carpet, and nobody seeing him in this state could seriously have demanded that he should let the manager enter his room. But it was not on account of this slight impoliteness, for which in normal times he could easily have made his excuses later, that Gregor would be dismissed. And he thought it would be more reasonable, just now, to leave him alone rather than to upset him with tears and speeches. But it was just this uncertainty which was making the others uneasy, and which excused their behavior. "Herr Samsa," now cried the manager, raising his voice, "what is the matter? You barricade yourself in your room, you don't answer yes or no, you needlessly upset your parents, and you neglect your professional duties in an unheard of manner. I am speaking in the name of your employer and of your parents, and I beg you seriously to give us a satisfactory explanation immediately. I am astonished. I took you for a quiet, reasonable young man, and here you suddenly give yourself airs, behaving in an absolutely fantastic manner. The head of the firm, speaking to me this morning in your absence, suggested an explanation, which I rejected. He mentioned the samples which were entrusted to you a while ago. I gave him my word of honor that this had nothing to do with the affair, but now that I have been witness to your obstinacy, I can assure you, Herr Samsa, that it deprives me of any wish to defend you. Your job is by no means safe. I had intended to tell you this in private, but, since you oblige me to waste my time here for nothing, I see no reason for keeping quiet before your parents. I'd have you know that lately your work has been far from satisfactory. We realize, of course, that the time of the year is not propitious for big business, but you must understand, Herr Samsa, that a period with no business at all should not and cannot be tolerated.